Hey everybody, today we're going to be talking about this Beatles box set. This is a forgotten box set from 1988, and it's Eleanor's favorite Beatle box set. And as you can see, she's going to demonstrate. Show them the, yeah. As you see, it's very sturdy, made of wood, and it's known as the bread box. And Eleanor really likes this one a lot. I actually got this about a week before Eleanor was born. So I've had it as long as I've had her, and it's just a great box set, and we really like it a lot. So thanks so much for watching this video. Hey everybody, I want to thank Eleanor, my daughter, for doing that intro with me. So as we were saying, we're going to be talking about this Beatles box set that I consider it to be kind of the forgotten Beatles box set. This is the box set that came out in 1988, November of 1988, and this was the first time that the Beatles music was released on CD all together in one box. And I actually picked this up, like I said, like a little couple of weeks before my daughter was born. So I've had this for about a year now. And of course, prior to that, of course, I've owned these CDs many, many times over, like so many of you as well. I remember the very first Beatles product I ever bought was Revolver, was the CD version of Revolver that's in this box set. And then I ended up buying all the Beatles albums, and I've probably had like 2 or 3 different copies of all these CDs throughout my life up to this point. And then when I got this box set, I wanted to have them all together, obviously, and I always wanted this box set. It was always a box set that I would see at like some of my dad's friends would have this box set at their house, and I always thought it was so cool to have all the Beatles albums all together, and it just was a cool, neat looking box. So speaking of the box, let's show it to you up close. Now this one that I got, it's not in the absolute best shape, but it's in pretty good shape is what I'd say. So you got the cool Beatles logo right there, and then there's a bit of damage on this one on the back, but it's still structurally very, very much in good shape. Structurally sound is what I should say. And it's got that cool, you can see the wood grain there, very, very nice. And let's see if I can do this on camera. So it has this bread box top here, this flip top. And a lot of these, this top is kind of gets either broken or offline or whatever. So I'm not gonna try to do this like this. I'm gonna do it down here on this coffee table here. Otherwise, I don't think I'll be able to do it. So you have to kind of two-hand it, and like a garage door, it opens up to reveal the Beatles CDs from 1988. And of course you get all the CDs right here. And then below there is a little booklet, and we'll talk about the booklet here. The booklet is honestly, oh, very good. Eleanor has a toy under here, and when I set the box down, the music box started playing. But the booklet has liner notes by Mark Lewison, and he, of course, back in like the early 80s to like the mid 90s, I'd say, or even maybe the late 90s, he was the Beatles historian. He worked on a lot of official Beatles projects, including this box set and the Beatles anthology. He was very instrumental in that. He wrote, I think, the liner notes, actually not the liner notes, but the track-by-track information for all the anthology tracks in those booklets. He worked on Paul McCartney's Wingspan project as well. So he was very much involved in the Beatles projects in the late 80s and the 90s. And then, of course, it seems like he kind of fell out of favor with some of the Beatles camp, and Kevin Howlett took over, and he's, of course, been doing all the Beatle projects ever since Mark Lewison just exited. But Mark Lewison still is writing great books. He wrote a book called Tune In, which is arguably the definitive Beatles story, like the early years. He's doing 3 volumes. That's the first volume, Tune In. I don't know when his second volume's coming out, but anyway, he's highly, highly respected. He also, of course, wrote the Beatles recording sessions book, which is totally a valuable piece of information. Anyway, back to this booklet. So this is not in the best shape like the box, but it's in pretty good shape. And of course, you know, at this point, 1988, that's almost 35 years ago, more than that, something like that. My math isn't too good. So this booklet is a bit old and the binding over time wears out. But basically what you have here, the first page has a table of contents, just tells you all the albums. Then you get a track by track, just little blurbs about each of the tracks. So I'm gonna see if I can get this to focus for you. So it's just kind of interesting. Each song gets a little write-up. For example, I'll read you, For I Saw Her Standing There. It says, a blistering opening to the Beatles' first album. This song ranks among the best British rock and roll recordings of all time, composed mainly by Paul and originally recorded under the working title 17. So it just gives you a little bit of information about each song. And of course, some songs have more information than others. There are also, I think there are some photos in here. Yeah, there are. There's a couple of pages with color photos. Like that. Cool shots. And yeah, just in general, it's a very, very, I would say very thoughtful booklet is how I describe it. You don't get a ton of information, but you get enough information in here. And especially for a box set released in like the late 80s, this is a very, very good booklet is what I would say. And when I was looking for one of these, a lot of them were selling it without this book. And I really, really wanted the book with the box set. So I'm happy that this one came with this book. Now let's talk about each of these CDs within this box set. So I'm sure a lot of you already know a lot of information about these CDs. A lot of people have made great videos about this box set online, including Andrew from Parlogram Auctions. He has a great YouTube channel. I'm sure you already know that. I'm a big fan of his channel, but he's talked about these Beatles CDs a lot and has great information. So I don't want to repeat too much of what a lot of people already talked about, but I'll just kind of give a rough description of each of the albums and kind of just my personal feelings about each one of these CDs. So the first four CDs, Please Please Me, With the Beatles, A Hard Day's Night, and Beatles For Sale, were all released in mono on here. And I know that was really controversial at the time because honestly the stereo mixes were widely available on vinyl and on cassette, on 8-track. You could get the stereo mixes of those albums. So they were out there, and the reasons why they decided to just release the mono mixes on the first four albums, I think it comes down to George Martin, and he just thought the stereo mixes were not up to his standards, I guess. So they released the mono versions. And that being said, the first four CDs on here are probably my least favorite of all the CDs in this box set. So the first CD in the box set is Please Please Me, of course, the Beatles' first album. And I gotta say that, you know, I don't listen to this one all that much. If I want to listen to Please Please Me, the mono mix of it, I'll listen to the CD that's in this Beatles in mono box set, which I absolutely love, and I've talked about before, and there's a video you can watch of me talking about it if you want to hear more information on that. So this is the version I want to listen to if I want to hear Please Please Me on CD in mono, right here. But it's nice to have this original 88 CD version just for the box set, to have a complete set of all their recordings from that time period. Next up, With the Beatles, again in mono, and once again, this, you know, it is what it is. It's not an amazing sounding version of With the Beatles. Again, if I want to listen to With the Beatles in mono, I'm going to listen to it on the Beatles mono box set. But like Please Please Me, it's nice to have a complete set of the Beatles 88 CDs. A Hard Day's Night is next. I have a personal love for this particular version of Hard Day's Night on CD. This was a CD that my dad had, and my dad would play a lot. So growing up, I remember I have very, very vivid memories of car drives listening to this. At nighttime, sometimes my dad would put on music while my brother and I were going to sleep. A lot of times it would be A Hard Day's Night, it would be this particular CD. So for me personally, while it's not my favorite way to listen to Hard Day's Night on CD, it definitely has very, very fond memories for me. So just the way the CD feels and just looks, it has that, brings back those great memories of listening to music with my dad and my brother. So I like that one. And of course, it goes without saying, I love all of the albums within this box set. It's the Beatles. I love everything they ever did. So when I'm talking about, oh, I like this or I don't like that or whatever, I'm talking about this particular version of format or whatever of it. So please, in the comments below, don't get too upset with me. Next up, Beatles For Sale, the fourth album in this CD box set. And this was an album, I'm a big fan of Beatles For Sale, and I always mention that because I feel like it's an overlooked Beatles album. And this version on CD is not all that great, of course, because like the other ones I just mentioned, the first four here, they're all in mono, and if I want to hear the mono versions, I want to listen to them in this box set, on CD that is. But it's nice to have, so Beatles For Sale. Next up, here comes the controversial additions to this box set. This is Help, and this is not the original mono mix, not the original stereo mix. This was remixed by George Martin, and I've talked about this in the past as well, and other people have talked about it, but I'll just give you a brief history. George Martin, when they came to want to release Help and Rubber Soul, he thought the stereo mixes were not up to par, so he went into the studio, took the original 4-track masters, remixed them, added additional reverb to the tracks, and the mixes are not all that different from the original stereo mix, other than he tried to balance the vocals out a little bit more, not have them just all panned, extreme panned to one side. And in general, I'd say that to the novice Beatle fan, it's not that drastic of a change as far as the original versions of Help and Rubber Soul. But the thing that I think is the main bone to pick I have with this version of Help and the version of Rubber Soul in this box, the reverb is so it's just different is how I'll describe it compared to the original 60s mixes. He used digital reverb that was available to him in the 80s, and at that time, of course, that was the norm to use that type of reverb. So, you know, love it or hate it, we have it, and it's nice to have these versions of Help and Rubber Soul. They are remixes, which is just kind of interesting. It's kind of I guess at this point it's not a little known fact, everyone kind of knows that, but I remember when I first heard that these were remixed, I think it was probably like in the 2000s or something, and I was very surprised. I didn't realize that. And at that point I hadn't really heard the original stereo mix of Help or Rubber Soul because I didn't have the records or anything like that. So it was kind of a treat when I first discovered that there was an original mix of Help and Rubber Soul that I hadn't heard. So that was kind of fun. And as we talked about, next up is Rubber Soul, and again, got the same treatment as Help. And a little side personal note, the original CD I had of Rubber Soul, there was always this skip that happened on Nowhere Man. It was on my CD, it was because I didn't take care of them and it had its problems. But that skip, it's weird. Now whenever I listen to Nowhere Man, it doesn't matter how I listen to it, what CD or whatever, I always anticipate that skip happening, even though it's not going to happen because I don't have that CD anymore. But I always think about that, especially when I'm holding this particular 1988 Rubber Soul CD version. I think about how my copy would skip on Nowhere Man, and it just sticks in my head. But this one doesn't skip. Okay, and the very first Beatles CD I ever bought, actually first Beatle album I ever bought on CD or vinyl or whatever, Revolver, and this is not a great sounding version of Revolver. On CD, it's got its problems, which I've talked about before. I have a video actually you can watch right here where I talk about What Went Wrong with Revolver. But you know, again, this holds a lot of personal fond memories for me. I just remember just staring at this and listening to the music and just couldn't believe how good it was. Just every song was good, and the artwork was cool, and I liked the booklet with the pictures of the Beatles with it wearing their sunglasses. They looked so cool. It was just hard to believe that I owned it and I could listen to it whenever I wanted to. So great memories with this CD. And next up, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And this, in my opinion, sounds wonderful. This is a really nice sounding CD. This is when the box set starts to get really good and really essential, in my opinion. If you don't own this 1988 CD version of Sgt. Pepper, I highly recommend picking one up. They are dirt cheap. You can get one for like, I think for this box set there was a couple CDs missing, so I had to pick them up outside of it, and this was one of them. I think I got this for like $4, and then I had to pay shipping as well, so like, you know, $7 or something. I got this, and it's cool because it has the cardboard slipcase outside, and it's got the booklet that comes with it, of course, and it's just a cool package, I think, for 1988. And again, it's the stereo version of Sgt. Pepper, and the original stereo version, I should say, the 1967 stereo version. And I think it sounds great. If you have a nice stereo system and you can turn it up, this is really, really nice. So highly recommend listening to this if you have not done so already. And next up, Magical Mystery Tour. And another one that has very fond memories for me. I remember my childhood best friend and I would listen to this just endlessly in his room. When his parents were driving us around, before we could drive, we would put this in the CD player and listen to it. It's just an album that we just could not get enough of. And yeah, just an excellent, excellent album. I don't need to tell you that, of course. I like the back of the CD as well. I think it's very cool. And next up, the White Album. And of course, the White Album, in this box set, you get each of disc 1 and disc 2 come in their own slipcase, which is always, I thought, kind of cool. And the White Album, this 1988 CD version of the White Album, is excellent. It's much like Sgt. Pepper. If you have a good stereo system and you can turn this up, this is excellent. And from what I've read, and from what I believe to be true, I do think this is pretty much just like almost as close as you can get to just a straight transfer of the original stereo master tape of the White Album. It really has great sound on here, and a lot of people rave about this, and they are so right. If you've never heard the White Album on this 1988 CD version, highly recommend it. And especially if you compare it to the 2009 stereo remasters, which I think are also pretty good, but and I know I don't want to contradict myself here. I know this sounds like I'm contradicting myself, and probably I am. But I agree with both of these statements. And the first statement is, while they sound good, and they do, they have their problems. And one of the biggest problems, I think, with especially the White Album 2009 stereo master, the bass is a bit overblown. And at times, certain songs, it can kind of ruin those songs. That's not happening on these 1988 versions of the White Album. The bass is pretty authentic, I think, and like I said, if you turn it up, it sounds great. So the White Album is totally worth owning. Put that back there. Next up, Yellow Submarine. This was actually I think this was the only CD that I hadn't previously owned before from these 1988 versions. I just never picked this one up. I think because by the time I was buying Beatles CDs, the Yellow Submarine song track had already come out in 1999, and I had that on CD, which I loved. And I think I had like rented this one from my local library, and so I'd heard it, and it didn't sound as good to me at that time as the 1999 Yellow Submarine song track. So I just never owned it. So when I got this box set, it was the first time I ever had this version of Yellow Submarine on CD. And it sounds fine. It's nothing to completely rave about, but it's cool to have it within the box set. Next up, Abbey Road. And this is how the original box set was presented. So this is the order that they have the CDs in. Now when I organize my collection, I always put, and I know this is probably wrong, and for some people this is like, what are you doing? I always put Abbey Road after Let It Be. Now I know Abbey Road was released before Let It Be, but in my brain, when I think of the Beatles' history, the songs on Let It Be were recorded, most of them were recorded before the songs on Abbey Road. Now I know, like, I Me Mine, of course, was recorded after Abbey Road, and so was bits of Let It Be and all that kind of stuff. I'm aware of that, but just in my head, it seems like Let It Be should be after Abbey Road. Just a little side note. Anyway, Abbey Road. This CD sounds excellent. I've talked about it before. It's a very, I don't need to tell you, Abbey Road is an amazing recording. And this CD is great, and I like it quite a bit more than the 2009 remaster. And of course, if you notice, I'm not talking about any of the new remixes done by Giles Martin, of course, because those are completely different, in my opinion. It's a different ball game, and I'm just talking about these original 60s mixes that were released on these CDs. And of course the remaster's done in 2009 as well. But this is great. So highly recommend Abbey Road from the 1988 box set. If I can get it back in there there we go. And here is Let It Be. Again, another one that sounds, another of these CDs that sounds great to me. Turn it up. It's crystal clear, very nice, nice sounding CD. And happy to have it, of course. And you get Past Masters Volume 1 and Volume 2. And with these included in this box set, you pretty much get everything the Beatles released up to this point in 1988 officially with these two albums, including all of their singles, the B-sides, the songs from the EPs that were not included on the albums, and a couple of, like, there's the charity single of Cross Universe that's included on here. So with these, they kind of rounded up all the loose ends of the Beatles' recording career. That being said, of course, you still there were a couple of, like, mixes that were officially released that are not included in here. I forget off the top of my head exactly what some of those are. But obviously, of course, the stereo mixes of the first 4 albums are not included, and those are unique to themselves. But then there's also other little oddities throughout the Beatles' career that are not included. But generally speaking, you get all the songs they recorded in this box set. And like I was saying earlier, it's forgotten, in my opinion. This is the forgotten Beatles box set. They are getting harder and harder to find, I think. And online, they tend to go for quite a lot of money. And I think I got this one, I think I got it for like $50. I believe that's what I paid for it. And like I said, it was not complete when I got it. So I just paid for, I think it had like, I don't know, I think it had like 11 CDs, something like that. And it was and it had the booklet, but the booklet was in bad shape. And then, like I said, the box was damaged. So for $50, that's a pretty good price to me. But I see them online. For some people, have them as high as like $500. To me, that's way too much to pay for something like this. What I would recommend doing is try to find someone just selling the box alone, and then piece together the set as you go. I think that's probably a better way to do it, a more cost-effective way at least, because you can get these individual CDs, like I said, for very, very cheap. Like at $5 at the most is what I would pay for any of these CDs. They mass produce these CDs like crazy. They're readily available. Go to any used record store that has CDs. You're going to find a ton of these in the what do you call them? The bins, I guess is what you would say, right? The bins. Can you tell I don't really look for CDs all that much out in the wild? Anyway, so that's how I would go about it. If you want to get a box set of your own, I would just piece it together, and I wouldn't pay any. I would try to get it for under $100. I think that's a fair price. Do I think this is an essential part of anyone's Beatle collection? Yes, I do. There are, like I said, certain CDs on here that they sound great, like the White Album especially, Abbey Road, Let It Be, Sgt Pepper, all great. That being said, you don't need to have this box set to own those. You could just have them individually and that'd be just as good. But for me, as a Beatle nerd and fanatic, like a lot of you, this box set is very, very cool to own, cool to have on the shelf, and yeah, I'm just really happy that I now have it in my collection. So I'd love to know what you think about this box set in the comments below. Do you own it still? Did you own it? Maybe you sold it. Do you listen to these CDs all that much? And yeah, let me know in the comments below what you think about this Beatles, the forgotten Beatles box set, the bread box from 1988. That's it for now. Hope you're all doing well. Take care and bye for now.